Hey everybody, JJ here. Today is Wednesday. We have Zoom networking coming at you again. I am really excited about our guest speaker today. I'm blessed, to have met so many fantastic people that are knowledgeable, and the best part of that is bringing these people to you and letting you hear their story and hearing who the true rock stars are out in our community, being the real estate world. The young man today is no exception. His name precedes him. He's out of the Fortune Builder Education Program. Everybody knows this guy's name. Everybody loves this guy. He is a mentor and a messiah of the youth of today, of teenagers, of kids. My good friend, JP Servideo. JP, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing amazing, man. I'm doing amazing. Really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, brother, you are a shining star, man. I mean, we're always told that what we need to do is look who we're talking to, because we are the result of the 5 people we spend most of our time around. And so I'm thinking, okay, who am I going to spend my time around? I'm going to call JP Servideo. I'm going to get him on the Zoom call. But let's talk about you a second, man. What part of the country are you in, JP?
At the moment, I'm actually in Boston,
Okay.
Massachusetts at the moment. Spent a lot of time in San Diego. Obviously, a lot of people know that too. But at the moment, I'm here.
Fantastic. Let's, I guess we're going to get into what you do, but,
Yep.
Growing up, whether it's high school or college or your teen years or your 20s, what are some of the things you did you always get into mentoring? Did you always get into the financial aspect? Have you always been a leader? I mean, what's a little about your journey getting to where you've gotten to?
What's funny? That's an interesting question. So I guess what I'll share with you, something that I've always been, is somebody that can't, if I see something that's a problem or something going on that I don't agree with, or I think that could be better, I've never been the person to wait for somebody else to fix it. Right. Like I've always been the person that, like, if something was going on that I didn't agree with, I had to speak up. I had to do something about it. Right. Like I always felt that if you're seeing something going on and you don't agree with it and you're not saying anything, you're just as bad as the person doing it. Right. Like I never was afraid to not get involved, right? Get my hands dirty. And I say that in this call because, so many people think, man, I wish I knew, how many of you right now on this call have ever said to yourself, like, I wish I knew that in high school. Right. Like, I wish I knew that when I was younger. Right. I wish I knew that when I was a kid. And so many people do that. And I think every single day we have kids and young people around us that we don't share that with, or we share it from the mindset of who we are now, not share it in the way of how would we need to say it to 15-year-old us. Right. Because who you are now and how you would articulate something you learn now is a lot different than how you would say it to 15-year-old you and everything you were going through at that point in your lives. So if you're asking me, I've always found, that's interesting because I've always found myself in leadership positions because of that. Not because I was the one that was like, you're going to be the leader, but it was usually more because I was the one that was willing to speak up and stand up and do something about it and get involved and be active and impact my community. And I like helping people. So I've always liked helping people. I've always liked supporting people. And I just always feel that's the best thing you can do with your time is help somebody else,
That's awesome. We talked the other day at length, and I was really amazed at some of our similarities, although we're about several decades apart in age. But some of our similarities. We've touched a little bit about your leadership ability and how you come about. But for those that don't know you, what I want to talk about for a second is the young man that I met 4 years ago that I saw on stage. And you were at the time running a program called Future Fortune Builders. And for those that don't know you and don't know Fortune Builders and don't know, they might know Fortune Builders, but not Future Fortune Builders. Can you tell us a little bit about that program and the gift that you brought and all the thousands of kids you've touched? But talk let's fill us a little bit about that before we get into our topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Future Fortune Builders was a program that I partnered with Than Merrill and Fortune Builders. I know a lot of you probably know who they are, who Than is in that group. We partnered together to build financial literacy and personal development camps, specifically for teenagers, teaching them all the things we wish we learned in high school, but also delivering it in a way where they're going to receive it. And delivering it in a way where they're not only going to receive it, but they're going to do it, right? Like there's a big difference between talking to a kid and them agreeing with something that you say, right? Some of you might have kids and, you tell them something and they say, okay, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparent, like I understand. But it's a big difference than when you're not around and they're just with their friends. Are they really going to do the thing or apply the lesson that they learned in that conversation? That's kind of different too. And that's really what that camp was about. So, I've obviously done other speeches and programs and camps, not partnered with Fortune Builders, but a lot of people know me as is, co-author of the High Schooler's Guide to Money with Than Merrill, and so grateful for that relationship because I learned so much from Than. I saw that. I saw the flash of the book there. Appreciate the plug. Who is that? That's Scarla. But yeah, that was a camp, and we took that camp all around the world. And I think one of the biggest things that we wanted to prove was that, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, gender, color of your skin, country you grew up in. If you understand these certain principles about money, and understand the impact on your life that it can have, you can have the same type of results the most successful people have, because there's a lot of commonalities. I got to learn that from Than. I got to apply a lot of that myself. Thank you. Yeah, that's the book right there. So that's kind of what that program was. And we ran over 60 camps. I believe it was 61 multi-day financial literacy camps, anywhere from Silicon Valley to Ghana, West Africa, Kingston, Jamaica, all over the US, 16, 17 different states. We've run it all over and applied those principles and proven that to be true, that anyone, anywhere can use this information. It can impact their lives in a big way.
Now, with Future Fortune Builders, and I use the phrase more generically, like someone might say Kleenex over bath tissue, or
yeah, that's no problem,
or Xerox over photocopy. But in your mission to work with kids, and you've taught them some things about investment and checking and debt, and tell us some of those things that you've pointed out to kids and how we know how they received it, but how do you formulate that, or what are some of the things you touch on for them?
Yeah, we talk about things like credit, good and bad debt. I mean, I think that's a really important concept, right? Like, is good and bad debt, and getting them to understand the responsibility that comes with good debt, right? Like, using good debt isn't just like this. It's not easy, right? Because you have to be very responsible and you have to really understand. That's the thing too, telling them the truth. I think that's a really big shift, because so many people grew up, and I bet a lot of people on this call can say that they grew up thinking debt was bad, right? And it's like the number one wealth accelerator in the world. And if you can get them that concept really early, man, you're already making headway. Things like that. We talk about, investing. I don't tell them what to invest in, right? I wouldn't consider myself an investing coach, right? That's not what I do. Right. But what I do is I get them to understand, what is a stock? What is real estate? How do these things work? Why do people buy them? Why might they not buy them? What are the risks that come along with that? Entrepreneurship, right? I know a lot of things is a lot of us here have learned, there's a big difference between like owning your time and like being kind of a slave to your job or your business, right? Having systems in your business, big concepts. And also simple concepts. And I say simple because if you really understand how to share them, things like inflation and return on investment, right? A lot of people want to tell kids what to do with their money, right? So many of you are like, you should do this with your money. I've never told a kid. And that's one thing I'll tell you. If I could tell you a secret that I think people think that I do, that I don't, is I've never told a kid what to do with their money. Not once. I've never told a kid you should do this with your money. What I do is I share with them the concept of return on investment, right? And I just say, hey, okay, you want to buy sneakers? That's fine. Like, I don't care. Buy sneakers. So if you bought it for this much and you wore them and they went down in value, how much would you make money or lose money? They're like, I lost money. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, so you're telling me I shouldn't buy sneakers? And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm telling you at all. But do you get that you lost money? And they say yes, because it's math, right? That's black and white. Even a teenager, I don't know, a lot of you have had teenagers, you can't argue with that. And they can argue with anything, right? So when you showed them that and they're like, well, yeah, I lost money. Okay, great. Buy whatever you want. And you just leave it at that. Now it's up to them. We talk about gross versus net. We talk about who you surround yourself with, and how that affects your success. A lot of you being on these calls, you guys get that concept because you're here on calls like this around other like-minded people. So, we talk about concepts like that, goal setting, building good habits. As a teenager, your brain is still kind of like wet cement, right? Where you can still mold your habits. And one of the biggest concepts that reasons that kids wait, right, to think about quote unquote important stuff. We're always making important decisions. We just don't know that when we're a kid. But a lot of reasons, we want to get over this concept that like you can change hard cement, right? That's like when you're mid-20s and your brain and your habits are a lot harder to change. But when you're still 15, 16 years old, your habits are a little more easily moldable, right? Like your brain can shift easier at that age. It's a little more limber because the development hasn't fully developed yet. So it hasn't really fully ingrained. So we talk about concepts like that. And, and then we have other longer events where we're able to talk about resume building and interview skills and, different types of how you should dress for an interview and practicing those questions. And, tons of great topics. Sometimes we get out in the community, do some community service stuff and field trip days and experiences. And it's been a lot of fun.
Most teenagers don't want to talk to their parents about anything. I know this. When I was a kid, I didn't want to talk to my parents. They don't want to talk to parents about anything. So how does one get their kids to really open up and have a conversation about something like money?
So this is kind of the way I'm going to say this. I mean, it's pretty black and white from what I've experienced. And I want to give a disclaimer, and that disclaimer being like every kid is different. Every family dynamic is different, right? So know that I know that. What I'm going to share with you is how I've been able to get across to some kids where I've had parents come up to me at the end of events and say, nobody can talk to my child. Like, I thought my child would be the first person to ever get kicked out of one of your camps. Like, they're miserable all the time. They get kicked out of school, right? And they leave my event and they're happy and they want to come back and they enjoyed themselves, right? So I'm going to share with you what I've done. Take it however you can internalize it. But what I can share with you is that I don't ask them to share with me. I share first. And I think that's something we miss, right? Like, so often we say, why don't you talk to me, or why don't you share this with me? Well, I would pose the question, what do you share with them? Do you talk to them about your day? Do you share things that you've gone through? Do you talk to them like a person? Because you're asking them to do the same without giving it back. I think it's a little unfair. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little unfair to ask that of them without you giving, right? Like I'm a big believer in giving first, right? Like giving and doing and leading by example, right? So when I talk to kids, I don't tell them, to hang out with different people. You know what I share with them? A situation where I hung out with some people and I got in trouble. I share with them a situation where, like, hey, and depending on the kid, how in depth can you get, right? But so many people have kids and even friends, right, that you are having a hard time talking to, and everyone's like, oh, we can't get through to them. And I'm like, do you talk to them? And not even just do you talk to them, like, when do you bring this up? Right? Do you bring it up with your kid when they're closed-minded? They just came home from school. You ask them the same question all the time. Or do you take them out to lunch one day? Hey, you want to go out to lunch? In the middle of that lunch, when it's a really good, lighthearted, we're just hanging out, having a good time. And I say things like, man, somehow find a way to organically bring up this thing. Oh yeah, I was talking to this friend of mine and this thing happened and they really made me mad. Like, I don't know if you've ever dealt with anything like that, but here's something that I deal with and what I've had to do. Right. And when I do things like that, I'll tell you, kids have flat out come up to me and be like, hey, I'm dealing with something similar. Hey, man, I didn't know that happened to you. Right. So if I could plead, I would flat out plead with parents to find ways to be more like, let me talk to you about me. Right. Like as a parent, like, I know we're so guarded because we want to put forth this certain persona, right? That we're here, we're your parent. This is, we're here to tell you all the good, we don't want to discredit ourselves, but it's really the opposite. And a lot of you, if any of you have done real public speaking, that people resonate with your faults far more than they resonate with your successes, right? People will resonate with your faults far more than they'll resonate with your successes. And our kids aren't any different. And I see Scarlett says, as parents, we have to be willing to share our failures and our shortcomings with our children. Yeah. And you do it in the right package, in the right way. But that's where I've found myself getting through to a lot of kids, because I've just shared experiences that I've had. And then kids on their own come find me at breaks and at lunches. And they're like, hey, can I, like, I had a girl recently. I'll give you just a very quick example where I was talking about, somebody I used to hang out with a long time ago. And, they got really bad into drugs. They were a very good friend of mine. I loved them very much. But I realized it got to the point where like I was spending so much time helping them that they didn't want to help themselves. I had to leave. I had to move on. Mm-hmm. And a girl came up to me and was like, hey, like, I got to ask you something. Like, I'm in the same situation. I didn't ask her to share with me. I didn't say, hey, if you have this, let me tell you what you should do. I just shared, and she felt comfortable because I'm sharing with me. And I didn't tell her what to do, but I told her how it could end, good and bad. I was like, hey, look, like, you have to realize that like you could be in this situation and all of a sudden that person could overdose and die. Like, this is a reality. And you have to know that you got to this place. And what's funny is, we're on this call talking about money, right? Like, we're on this call talking about how to talk to our kids about money. That's why a lot of you logged on. Right. But the reason I'm getting into this is because what you have to realize is a conversation about money and a conversation about that is not different. They're the same. And if you can have a regular conversation like that with your kid, well, money's the same type of, now they're going to ask you about that too. They're going to be willing to listen to your advice. Right. And it's not, and again, that's the key. Is I don't give them advice. I give them information and I let them know that I care about them no matter what decision they make. That's the other key too. That's why kids share with me, because the reason a lot of kids don't share with you is because they feel like they're going to be judged. They feel like you're going to judge them and you're going to tell them what to do, right? You're not going to listen to them. You're going to hear what they say and you're going to tell them what you want them to do. Right? Which is not what they want. So they don't talk to you. Right? Or you're going to judge them and be mad at them for the situation that they're in. So you're not going to really talk to them about the situation that they're in. You're going to be like, how did you get here? And all this stuff. And in their mind, they're just thinking, mom, dad, like, well, I'm here now. Like, what do you want to do? You want to talk? Do you want to help me or you just want to scold me? So they don't bother. Right? So it's the same with money, right? It comes down to, are you just really empathetically listening to them? Or are you just trying to tell them what to do? And I would tell you, and I know this is a lot harder for you. You might just be a caring adult. These could be your actual children. So you're so emotionally attached to their result. But let's be honest, would you rather them mess up while they're 15, 16 years old and living under your roof? Or do you want them to mess up when they're 40? Right? Do you want them to mess up when they're 40 and they have so much more on the line? Maybe they have a family of their own and now they're making bad decisions and, everything goes to crap and it's so much harder to get back. Or do you want them to mess up when they're 15 and they can still just come home? They still have dinner on the table, right? Like, that's when you want them to mess up. You just have to remind them, hey, look, when it comes to either spending your money or a situation you're in with your friends, it's like, look, here's something that I dealt with. And I just want you to know, no matter what you decide, I love you either way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times kids think if they don't do what you tell them to do, you're gonna judge them for that. That's very important. So when I'm talking to kids, and this is why, they know that I don't judge them either way. I have had kids tell me things. They're like, hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this. Or like, I haven't told anybody this, but I feel like I can talk to you. Because when they came up to me, it was no judgment, zero judgment. You want to share with me? Great. Look, I care about you either way. I can tell you the good, like it's going to be straight up. They know it's going to be the truth. And it came from a place of love. Right. So when I get them to kind of sum that up, it's like, hey, I share first. Hey, let me share some things that happen about me. And by the way, sometimes I share and they don't say anything. That's okay. Like I'm not sharing with them so they do talk to me. I'm sharing with them so I can share with them something that happened to me. And guess how they feel? I think I want to share with JP something that happened to me, because I feel this is okay here. He's done it. Now I can do it. Sometimes I share on day 1. Kids don't talk to me till day 3 or 4. Right? Sometimes they never do, but they go talk to somebody else. Right? But they feel that. And it's the feeling you give people, not what you say to them. So the way they feel with me is unjudged, supported. No matter what decision they make, they have love coming from me, if that makes sense. So that's how I get them to share. I share first. If you want like a tangible point, I share first. I don't dare ask them to share with me. I'm going to be all stoic and not talk to them ever about anything in my life. And I'm going to ask them to be open-minded with me. That's unfair. And to be honest, it's a little ignorant and naive to do that. I'm sorry. It just is. I just think it's unfair to the kid to ask to be such a one-sided emotional relationship.
Oh, I loved everything you said there. It gets down to a lot of what I talk about sometimes is the relationship, and real estate investors talking about deals and getting to know the person first. I love kids. I've never had kids. I wanted to have kids. Opportunity presented itself. But for years I worked with kids, and I love your gift. Your gift is very apparent. How do you get these points across to kids who seem disinterested?
Caring about them, caring about what they care about, right? Like they're disinterested because, again, they think you have an agenda, right? They're not interested in doing what you want them to do. They're not interested in you doing what you want them to do. They don't care what you want. They care what they want. And they think they're disinterested because, yeah. Thanks for telling me how I can do what you want me to do again. Right? Like I'll give you a good example. Like, when kids come to my events, I tell them things like I said, hey, I am going to, how many of you want to play video games for the rest of your life? Right? You just want to sit in your room. You want everyone to leave you alone, and you want to play video games. You want to go to the movies, right? You don't want your parents to yell at you. You want them to just leave you alone, right? How many of you know what I'm talking about that have kids, right? Like, what I'm talking about, right? Or kids around you, like they just want to be left alone sometimes, right? Well, they want to be left alone because you're not doing anything that they're really interested in. Right. And I think one of the biggest mistakes parents make, and again, this has everything to do with money, but it's this. What's really interesting is my financial literacy workshops. And I want you guys to understand this, that like sometimes the first half a day, we don't really talk a whole lot. We talk about 1 or 2 concepts about money, but we talk about things like this because then we apply the principles in what I'm saying to you now to money. And I'll tie it in maybe, before we wrap, I'll show you how we can tie all this in. But I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I'm going to say parents and caring adults, right? Because you could just be a parent of a kid. You could be someone who coaches a team, like someone like J-Day, right? Like, and you have just as much impact. Maybe you don't have kids at all, Grant, whatever. Most parents think, well, I know my child. They're my child. I know them. right? Who's even said that to your child, right? I know you, you're my child. Let me see those hands up there. There's got to be a couple of you in here that can admit that, right? Like, no, I know you. So well, let me ask you this. Well, if they know you, and I saw Melissa, I caught your hand going up, right? Well, if you know them so well, why would they be interested in anything you have to say? Right? You have to realize that when kids turn 8, 9, 10 years old, neurologically, like up until about 8 years old, kids are a reflection of their parents, right? They're a reflection of their parents, their environment, and the people that you have put them around, the schools they've gone to. That's who they are, just nothing but a sum of those parts. Well, around 8, 9, 10 years old, kids start to develop, who am I separate from everybody else? Who am I, JP Servideo, have nothing to do with anybody. What are my core values? What are my belief systems? Right. And a lot of times they don't share, they're not just going to walk up to you one day and go, mom or dad, like, here's my belief system that's different from yours. I'm not going to do that because guess what? They don't feel like they're in a safe space to do that yet because you haven't, some of you may have. And again, that's why I'm just speaking in generalities. Some of you may have, but for the most part, I find that they just assume, oh, this is my child. I know them. Well, your child is growing into a different person. So the question was kids who seem disinterested. Well, why don't you take an interest in them first? Right? What kind of music are they listening to? And don't just say it to tell them that your music is different and their music stinks and yours is better, right? What kind of things are they interested in? What kind of subjects? What type of after school activities maybe they've never tried that they've thought of? Like, I would encourage you to learn about them, right? Learn about who they are and who they've become. Because again, you're giving and being interested, right? Like, I don't assume anything about any kid that walks into my class. I could have a kid walk in and they're so miserable, right? And you might have your kids come home and they look miserable. So you, in your mind, go, my kid's miserable, right? So you treat them like they're miserable. Right? You treat them like they're miserable, right? You're like, oh, let me leave them alone, blah, blah, blah. What I usually try to do is I'm just myself. Like, yes, I might not push as hard, but like some girl comes in and sits at the back of the room and sits on the ground. I'm like, hey, my name's JP. How are you? Meh. I don't buy into that and go, oh, you're going to be nasty to me. Why don't you say hi? Why don't you smile? No, I'm like, okay, well, hey, look, if you need anything, I'm here for you. Just let me know. And then they're like, oh, like he didn't even like buy into my miserable face. He just is just being nice to me, whether I'm miserable or not. It's kind of hard to be mad at somebody like that. So again, if and the point is I'm taking an interest in them, right? So let me tie this into money. Right? You're trying to get them to do things certain ways with their money without asking them, what do they want to do with their money? You're not asking them what they want. You're telling them what you want them to want. Why would they listen to you if that's what you're doing? Like, hey, like, just, okay, I get like you want to buy sneakers. Like, as your parent, like, I just want you to know that if you buy this, this happens. If you buy this, this happens. I love you either way. Right. But do you get the difference here? That's all. Hey, like, because then if you do that and it might not hit today, it might not hit tomorrow. But 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now of you taking that approach, guess what they might say one day? Mom, Dad, I think I want to do something different because, you've been showing me the difference in buying this and buying this. And I've been buying this. And you're right. I have no money. Well, now I'm starting to think I want more money. Hey, Mom, how do I do this? Now you're not the parent telling your kid what to do. Who are you? You're just the supportive adult helping them get who wants, what they want, not what you want them to want. Does that make sense? You see how we got there? And it doesn't happen overnight. So yeah, I mean, that's, kids are disinterested because are you interested in what they're interested in? Because I bet if you talk to them what they like, they're very interested. That's why the first thing I say, hey, whoever wants to play video games the rest of your life, I got you. And even right now, you guys are like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, guess what? Let's talk about it. Because what they think it takes to get what they want and what it actually takes are two very different things, right? What it actually takes to get what they want, to play video games all day, every day, guess what? it takes having enough money to pay the rent and right groceries and enough money to get your internet. And guess what? We got to buy a TV and we got to buy games. We got to buy those games every year because there's always a new one. We need a nice chair. We need a nice screen and controllers. That all costs what? Money, right? And I need money every month to continue to pay for these things, don't I? So great. If you want to play video games the rest of your life, guess what? Here's what wealthy people do. They go buy assets that make them enough money so that they can do what they want to do. I've just helped you pay video games for the rest of your life. And they're like, I love you for that. Like they love me for that. But I didn't do anything different than what you said. I just made it about what they want, not what I want them to want. Now, you think they're interested about that? You think they're interested about learning how to how many of your kids say, like, I just want everyone to leave me alone. I just want cool. I'll show you how to make everyone leave you alone. And they're like, now they want to know because we're talking about what they want, not what I want them to want. I'm going to use an interesting analogy here, right? I'm going to use a relationship, for example, right? Like you and your significant other. There's things that you like that they don't like and things that they like that you don't like, right? But I've noticed, and every relationship is different. I have noticed that the couples that are willing to just sometimes go do what the other person likes to do has a better relationship. It's not different with your children, right? Saying, hey, like, who are your favorite TikTok people? Hey, will you show me a couple videos? And like, it might not be for you. You just spend 10 minutes before dinner just listening. And by the way, not telling them it's good or bad. Just, oh my God, like, what is it about this that you like? Oh, what is it about this that you like? Guess what we're doing? Now I'm learning about them. I'm interested in them. Guess how they feel? They feel interested in you. They feel more open. They're not feeling judged. You're just learning about them and that's it. So, if you think about a relationship, if it's very one-sided, from my experience, those don't work out the best.
As far as kids go, there's so many things for kids to learn about money. What do you think are some of the most important things for them to learn? There are some things that are higher priority and, checking credit cards. I mean, what are the important things for kids to learn about money?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you two specific things that I think are just kind of essential, like to their like if there were a couple concepts about money that I would have to learn initially, here's what it would be. The first thing would just be compound interest, because the biggest thing about compound interest, most kids think they have time. Compound interest gives them the oh my God, the sooner I do this, the less I have to work later. Right? Like if you were to take the amount of hours that you would need to work, right? So let's say you don't start investing till you're 25 years old, right? The amount of hours you would need to work to retire with, let's say $3 million is X. Well, if I start at 15, the amount of actual hours I need, which just means less money, I need less money because it grows on its own, less working time. Does this make sense? So when you show them this, it's just met. And by the way, here's the best thing about that. They can't argue with it. They can't argue with it. It's black and white. Teenagers argue with anything. That's just math. That's 2 + 2 = 4. A kid can't argue with that. I've never had a teenager argue with me that makes sense. So then they say, oh, so I should start now. What do we say? Oh no, you start whenever you want. I just want you to know that you can't complain that you don't have more money later if you spend all your money now on this. Right. So compound interest, I think is a big one. Another major one that we're actually almost all right. I'm going to see who gets this first. Type in the chat what you think the very first thing most people put their money into in their lives. The very first thing most people put their money into in their lives. Neurologically. Right? When are we learning the most? As a baby, like when you're a baby and you're born, your brain is just taking in information, sounds, smells, right? Words, like everything. Your body is just consuming information at the fastest pace it'll ever consume. So as a child, what are we teaching our kids? We take our money, put it in the piggy bank. And what do most kids do with their piggy bank money? They break it open one day and do what with that money? They spend it. Yeah. I can see, Kristen, I can see you doing it with me. Yeah. I appreciate the participation, right? You see Michael doing it. I see a couple of you doing it. So what do most, maybe not on this call now because we've learned, but what do most adults do with their money? They get their paycheck. Where do they put it? In the bank, right? And then what do they do with their money in the bank? They spend it. I mean, is it different? It's no different. Habitually, we have been conditioned to take our money, put it in one place, and get rid of it, put it somewhere else. Right. And it goes away, not invest it. We buy stuff with it. Right. Oh, people say, well, I save it. Okay. You save your money and that money goes up and you buy something big with that savings. Right. That's what most people do with their money. So the other concept, and this is a fun little game you guys can do, or like an arts and crafts project on a Saturday, cold Saturday. I actually did a video on YouTube with this with Paula Sajan's kids, if you could spot the kids, a long time ago. It's a little long, but you create 4 jars, right? You teach kids to spread money out. There's actually also, if you go on Amazon, I have no affiliation with this. I don't get anything for this, but I did find this thing. It's called a Money Savvy Piggy Bank. And it's got 4 slots in it, right? And it says spending, saving, investing, and giving back. Now, here's what we do as parents and caring adults. When our kids, when they're babies, when they're 1, 2, 5 years old, who cares? When they get money, you tell them to spread it out. Now, when they're young, it's irrelevant what they put where. Doesn't matter. What's the only concept we're trying to get to them? Spread your money out. Get your money, divide it up. Get your money, divide it up. As they get older, you know, we ask kids are like, oh, I'm going to go to the mall and buy this. Be like, oh, what section of your piggy bank are you going to take that money out of? Right. That's the spending. Now you're just casually teaching them what these do. And you get them to understand spending goes away. Savings goes away. Giving back, although feels good, does go away. But what does the investing bucket do? That one grows. That one goes up. And guess what that eventually does if you do it well enough is it pays to fill the other buckets too. And it fills them enough where you don't have to work to fill the buckets. Does this make sense? So you can get the piggy bank on Amazon. You can get 4 jars, right? You can get 4 shoe boxes, 4 envelopes, right? Like you can have a fun little activity at home with the kids. Be like, hey, you know, everyone find 4 things we can put money into, and let's label them, let's doll them up, let's make them really nice. I mean, it's a cool little activity that people can do. So that's the second thing. But I'm going to give you a quote that I kind of developed on my own. The desire to learn is greater than any single piece of information you can give them. The desire for your kids to learn about money is greater than any single piece of information you can provide to them. Let me ask you this. Who here is, and maybe not all of you are, maybe you do other types of investments. Who here is like dead set real estate is the way you're going with your investing for the most part? You might have a little stocks here or there, but like your primary vehicle is real estate to invest your money. Who's those people? Let me see some hands up. Okay, Gary, why you said income plus? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Why real estate? Just like in 15 seconds or less.
Well, specifically for this, example, you got a multifamily, you're constantly getting, income from that. And then on the back end, when you go to sell, you also have the appreciation of the property, and it should over time bring you a significant amount more.
So what's like the actual principle? Like what's like the fundamental thing you're considering which makes you choose real estate?
I have learned enough about it that I understand it, and it works for me.
And what do you understand? And if you're not sure, just say I'm not sure where you're getting at. But what do you understand that makes that a more attractive asset class than something else?
The basics and the math.
The math, right, Gary? Gary, if I do the math, mathematically, what's a better investment most of the time?
Real estate. I don't know anything that could be better. I'm sure.
Okay, so here's my point, Gary. Here's my point, Gary. Don't know what else you get into, other investments you got, but anyway, my point is, Gary, and for everybody else, you're not picking real estate because you just chose it one day. Because if you do the math and you sit down, if you think about appreciation, if you think about cash flow, if you think about equity, if you think about all of tax breaks, What's a better investment than real estate? There's really not many. Yes,
Right.
entrepreneurship may be, but that's got a lot of risks, right? One of the safest investments that there is real estate. So what I'm getting at is we don't teach our kids about like go buy real estate. Just teach them about return on investment. If I were to add one more thing to that, the concept of return on investment. Because if they understand return on investment, that applies to any asset class. And if they do the math and they're evaluating all the asset classes, well, guess where they'll end up? If they do the right math, they're going to end up with, maybe I should do real estate. Now, whose idea is it going to be? It's going to be theirs, not yours. If that makes sense. So those are some of the things that I would recommend, compound interest, dividing up your money until one day they start asking you, hey, well, what about this investing bucket? Hey, mom, how do we build it? You keep saying this goes up. How does that work? Now you're just a supportive parent. Return on investment, get them to understand that math. Get them to understand that math. And you know what? Sometimes, what kids will say to me? Because I talked about sneakers. They'll be like, well, JP, what if I buy a pair of sneakers and I resell them? I was like, now you're thinking. And they're like, oh, you're not mad at me for saying that. Mad at you. You just made money, not lost it, but you can't wear those sneakers. You got to sell them. But I go, hey, kid, that's entrepreneurship. I love it. Go do it. And they're like, oh, yeah. So guess now in their mind, they're like, I came up with a good idea. They thought they were going to give me a smart comment, right? But I was like, done. That's exactly what I want you to do. So, so those are some things that those are some basic things, but there's nothing more important. There's nothing more important than them having the desire to want to learn about money. And that's actually what the compound interest and the 4 buckets both accomplish that. They both accomplish you giving them, because if you talk about compound interest, they're going to ask you the question, well, how do I do that? Which they would have never asked you if you didn't teach them that concept. 4 buckets, the investing bucket grows. Mom, Dad, how do I invest? Oh my God, now they're asking you as opposed to you having to tell them to invest money. Do you see the difference in how we get them there? You can get the book. I think, JJ, if it's on your site, I believe you can order a copy right through there. It'll send you to Amazon. It's available on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, my website has a link to get JP's book right off of Amazon. So anyone's interested, it's there. It's under the books tab on the website. Hey, JP, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the 4 buckets piggy bank. Is that what it's called?
If you're looking for it on Amazon, it's called the Money Savvy Piggy Bank.
So it's these things here.
Yep. Pig, blue, purple, green. I think there's a one other color. If you click on it, you can choose a different color too. So like I said, I have no affiliation with them, but like I said, you don't even have to buy that. You can go get empty jars that are at home, have them make it. If you need something to do one day, shoe boxes, let them doll them up. Anything like that works. You don't have to buy that off Amazon.
Great. I think it's so important that we talk to our kids. My dad was raised in the Middle East, and yet I grew up watching Andy Griffith and My 3 Sons and Leave It to Beaver. And I know that parents don't always know how to talk to their kids. And I think what you do is so invaluable because not every parent is a Scarlett Pineda or a Kristen Ryan and has the ability to talk to their kids and have a good relationship. I know because my mom was like that, but my dad wasn't. And it's so important to have, when you don't have one, a male role model like yourself, to have a man be able to sit up there and be nice and be kind and connect with kids and let them know that there's another way, and that JP Servideo is an example of that other way. There are people out there like you. And I think what you bring is so huge. I mean, seriously, man, my heart flutters to just think of the impact you have and what you do for kids, because I've always loved kids. I volunteered to help kids for years. Part of my group is donating to a nonprofit for kids. And anybody that does things for kids is just huge in my book. And I've been to the Fortune Builder boot camps when after the end of the weekend and you bring the kids on stage and we ask the kids what they thought, and they're just enamored, they're just in love, and they're just energized. And not everybody has that gift that you have. And I want to thank you for coming to our group and sharing and giving us the insight and perspective to be patient and to be understanding and to be flexible and to think of life sometimes through the eyes of a 15-year-old and not through a 50-year-old, or a 40-year-old, or however the parent may be. But I want to ask, does anybody else have a question for JP before we kind of roll along into the breakout rooms, just for the sake of?
Well, I see Mark asked one question about how do you teach kids stocks versus real estate. So Mark, what I do there is I just go over what is a stock, what is a dividend, how do these work? What is real estate? How do you buy them, right? If you're underage, your parents have to help you. How does that work? I just share with them like the technical facts about what it is, how you buy it, the risks involved. And you kind of let them make their own decision on that. A lot of kids want to start with stocks. One thing I'll tell you is even my nephew, the first thing I started him on was a stock, but I didn't necessarily buy him a stock I thought was going to go up. I mean, I did buy him a stock I thought was going to go up, but I bought him a stock of a company he was interested in. And buying him a stock of a company he's interested in, guess what happened? He wanted to read the news. He was paying attention to what was going on. So that's just a couple of things on stocks versus that. Gary says Cynthia had raised her hand. Cynthia, do you have a question?
Thank you, JP. I wish I had you with me the last 2 days. That's what we've been talking with my daughter. She started working recently,
okay,
and she wants to spend the money that we have our differences. And because I'm a single mother, right, we don't have somebody else to bring the money that I want her to take care of things, right? So we have these issues today in the car. In the way to her work, she was asking me, is making money easy or difficult? And I started giving her a speech, and she says, you see, I cannot ask you anything. You cannot answer what I'm asking you.
Because what did you say? So what did let's do this real quick. What was the question she asked you?
She asked me, is making money easy or difficult?
And what did you say?
I don't know what I started giving my speech on. I don't remember right now, but she wanted a yes or a no. But I guess
she wanted a yes or a no, right? She wanted a yes or a no. But one thing is, it's not yes or no. Mm-hmm. It's what I would say is this, is I would say, well, let me tell you where I messed up. Because I'm someone that grew up with a single mother, 3 kids. I don't know how many kids do you have?
1, thanks to God, because she counts for 5.
Well, here's what I would tell her. I'd be like, look, I didn't plan on being in this situation, right? But what I know now is that if I was 15 years old, or however old she is, like if I was 15 years old and I had taken just part of the money that I made while I was working, right now wouldn't matter if I was a single mother with 5 kids. I'd have plenty of money. But I didn't know what I know now, right? So do you see how I'm just sharing something that I went through, right? And something that I deal with because they want, you want to yes. Here's the other thing I would do too. Now, she's a 15-year-old girl. I'm not going to assume your daughter's different than others, but would you assume that sometimes she's a little difficult to talk to?
She's been lately. Yeah.
Yeah, she's 15, right? That's right. I think we all know what I'm getting at here. 15 years old. I grew up with sisters, so I saw it firsthand, right? I would say, look, do you really want me to tell you? Yeah, Mom, I just asked you. Yeah, I get you asked me, but sometimes I tell you things and you don't want to hear what I have to say. So look, you can do what you want with your money. I love you no matter what. But if you really want to know, I'll share with you what I did at 15 and where I messed up. Then you can do what you want with that information. Now you're making her go, okay, Mom, I will listen to you right now. Because guess what's happening right now? Her brain is open at the moment. She's open. That doesn't happen often with 15-year-old kids, guys or girls. They're not usually very open-minded. You've now got her open. She said, Mom, tell me this, but you hold on. Like, do you really want to know? Because I'll tell you. Might not be what you want to hear, but it'll be the truth. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, because you could, first thing I would tell her, it's your money. You do whatever you want with it. What I want to share with you is when I was 15, I bought clothes or I went to the movies, and I never put anything aside for me to grow for my freedom. I never worked on buying my freedom first. I worked on buying stuff first. And guess what? I got into a situation which I didn't expect. I didn't expect to have a daughter and only me. That's not what I expect. It wasn't the game plan. But hey, here's where we are. But if I had done this, and this when I was 15, right now, it wouldn't even matter if I had 5 kids, because I'd have plenty of money. And money doesn't make you happy, but it does give you the freedom to do what you want. Gives you the freedom, and tell her, be like, I would love nothing more than to give you everything. But because I made some mistakes, if you really wanted an honest answer, that's the answer. And now, but hey, do what you want. The first thing you need to know about money is you should do whatever you want with it, because it's your money. You work for it. But remember something, you're going to work for that money and you're just giving it away every time you go somewhere. You should keep a little for your own freedom so that you never have to work again. That's what I would have done. But do what you want. I love you either way. I love you no matter what you do. It's your money. You should always know that your money, you can do what you want with. But you are responsible for how much you have later. And if you want to ever know more, just let me know. If you want to know how to invest, let me know. Well, tell me what to buy. Well, hold on. I'm not going to tell you what to buy. But if you want to sit down one day like adults, I'll share with you some things that I'm doing in real estate and why I chose this and why I'm getting on these calls on Wednesday nights, why these are important to me. You see what I mean? Now this is a conversation now, not you as her mom telling her what to do. Mom, what should I do with my money? Do this, do that. Oh God, you're impossible to talk to. Is it easier? Right? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You made it a conversation.
Thank you so much.
So hopefully that helped a little bit.
I'll let you know.
Let me know. Shoot me a message. I'd love to hear.
Your advices are perfect. It's just my daughter has been difficult lately. Thank you.
You know what though? Can I ask you something?
Yes.
I was at an event once and a lady came in yelling at me. First day. I mean, most of us here have been to live events before, right? Mm-hmm. I had a lady yelling at me, screaming, coming in. I can't believe the parking was $20. You guys got this event and it's $20, and she's yelling at me over $20. And I sat there, I listened, letting her yell at me. And as soon as I was done, I was like, did your morning go okay? And what do you think she said to me? No, she had just gotten some bad news, right? One of her parents had just gotten some bad health news. There was all this stuff going on, right? So maybe there's something else going on, right? It's really not when they're yelling. And that's the thing too, is when they're yelling at you, about something that's so insignificant, we yell back because we're getting yelled at by our kids. And I'm not saying it excuses anything, but I'd be more curious, like, hey, like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense why you'd be this mad at me about this. I didn't do anything. Like, are you okay? Like, or like maybe leave it alone. And then like on Saturday, be like, hey, you want to go get breakfast? And then at breakfast, why don't you be like, hey, like, I just noticed you seem a little upset lately. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but I just want to let you know, like, hey, is anything going on? Like, is there anything you want to just talk about? Like, hey, no judgment. You've just been seeming upset lately. And no, Mom, I'm fine. Okay, cool. Hey, let's talk about something else. Like, right? Like, that's really where it's not even just about, and that's why I wrote like what to teach kids about money, how and when, because it's not just what you teach them. It's when you deliver it and how you deliver it. That's really important. And most of the time they're not open, but in that car, in that conversation, that was an opportunity. But also if you notice, don't just think, oh, you're my daughter. I know you're just being this way. Be like, hey, I'd love to learn about you. Maybe you take her to breakfast and don't even ask her what's wrong with her. Take her to breakfast and be like, hey, like, been listening to anything new lately? Well, what's like the new stuff you're into now? Like, I feel like I just would love to learn about you. Man, how do you think that's going to make them feel?
Mhm.
How would you feel if you were 15?
Yeah.
Right? Like, your parents probably told you your music was crap too. Didn't
But
they? Right?
I was
Whatever
going
it
to
was.
say, yeah, thank you. My parents were not very much around. They both work long hours.
Yeah.
And
So you didn't have those conversations, right? You were fending for it on your own. And right now, don't you wish you knew some of this stuff when you were younger, but wasn't there? It's not their fault. Like, it's no right or wrong. It's where we are. But it's the same with money, right? So you're just there to give her information, share some experiences that like, look, it's, if you really wanted to know, here's the experience. So that's kind of the approach that I would take there.
thank you so much.
Thank you for asking. I really appreciate the question.
JP, do you have a website or anything like that?
Yeah, you can go to JP. I'm JP Servideo on everything. jpservideo.com. You can find me JP Servideo. Yeah, there you go. jpservideo.com, Instagram, follow me, LinkedIn, connect with me. If you guys are using any of this stuff, I'd love to see you commenting, and you could find my book. I do sometimes work with, I say teenagers, but families and parents, because teenagers are underage, so there's only so much you can do one-on-one with them. So I do some one-on-one work in special cases if somebody really wanted something like that, and kind of take a couple conversations. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, connect with me, LinkedIn. I'd love connecting. I'd love to see if you guys are using any of the stuff we talked about. You have any pictures, tag me in them. Yeah, that's me. Most of my stuff is all based on that, talking to the kids and having a really good time. But yeah, you can find me on any of that. Like, you can find the link to Amazon on JJ's website. But yeah, connect with me. I'd love to hear how it's going. And I'd love to hear if you have questions or if you're just looking for more support. Just let me know. Yeah. Now, Cynthia, I'm curious if you'll get an opportunity to have a conversation with her again. And, but also too, just know if you do get the book is written, like, the first line in the book is like, I get you probably don't want to read this. And then it says, if you do, here's, good information, but you also might not. And I understand. I always challenge them if your kid doesn't want to read the whole book, it passes the thickness test. It's not thick. It does not take long to read. Challenge them to just read the first page. And if after the first page, they don't want to read anymore, that's okay. First chapter maybe, but first page usually gets them. Hopefully too, if we do some live events, hopefully we'll be doing more soon, working on a few things, but I hope to keep running them. But yeah, that's how you can find me. If you do get the book and you had a good experience, a good review never hurts either. So shameless plug there.
Fantastic. JP, I want to thank you for coming on today. And before we cut away, my group's a networking group. And we've got people, we've got about 2,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel. And so hopefully they're all watching this. But I wanted to ask you, it's a real estate group. It's a networking group.
Yeah.
And as you coach people on how to be successful, and predominantly kids, obviously, but for the investors that are watching this, and everything you're talking about today is about relationships. But I want to ask the question I usually ask my guest speakers. What do you think the importance is for the real estate investor, has kids, doesn't have kids, but in our success in life, the importance of networking? And I'll just say building, what's the importance of that? And maybe joining a group, something like this, where there's a platform for networking.
Yeah, I'm gonna say two things, and I'm gonna piggyback off one thing you said earlier, JJ, that I 100% believe in. If you notice, none of my stuff is JP Speaks or JP Investor Guy. Like, that's not, you are your brand. Your name is your brand. And I was told that a long time ago in a youth speaking mastermind. At one point I spent $10,000 a year for 5 straight years just to learn how to take my message and put it in a youth. I mean, this I didn't just get this overnight. Yes, I have a passion for it. Yes, there's a certain level of natural feeling I get when I do this, but I still invested every year for 5 years, $10,000 a year. And that's just one group, not even counting other things. That's not counting the expenses to go to the events and everything that I went to. And one of the first things they told me is you are your brand. And the other thing too, is that even though if you're in this game, real estate, investing, youth speak, it doesn't matter what it is. No one really takes you serious for a couple years, because there's a lot of people that come in and make a couple of posts as a realtor, or a couple of posts as an investor. And, you've been doing it for a year. You made 1 or 2 social media posts, couple of walkthroughs of a property you made on an Instagram story, right? Yay. And everyone's kind of like, yeah. It's not really until you see 3, 4, 5 years where now people are just reaching out to me, even after maybe a few months of not seeing anything from me. They're like, hey, you're the one that works with kids, right? Because I have done it for 8 years, right? Like, so if you just stick with it, I remember JJ, and I'll just share something with you, JJ, I've never shared with you, is that I remember JJ when he first started taking pictures of boot camps of him and other people that he would meet. JJ would just be taking pictures of him, say, hey, let's take a picture. I'm like, who is this guy wanting my picture? I don't know, right? But he caught me. I'm like, that was more than 4 years ago, JJ. If I remember, I don't even know if you go back, who knows when the very first picture we took together was, right? But you were just a guy taking pictures, right? Well, 4 years of just doing that and never leaving that quote unquote spotlight, never stepping out of that, just always being that person. Eventually it became who he is, not something he does. Does that make sense? Right? Like real estate investing shouldn't be something you do. It should be who you are. Like, you're an investor. That's just what you do. And if everything you're doing is what an investor would do, the deals come, right? Like the deals come. Like, I was always a youth motivational speaker. That's just in my mind. I was that person. So everything I did was like that. And all of a sudden, one event, 1 year, a second event, the next year turned into 1 year. We did 19 events in 1 year. They just snowballed, but it took 3 years. It took a year of planning the first one. We only did 1 in 1 year. We did 1 the second year. All of a sudden, we're doing 19 in 1 year, 2 international. We're going all over. Nothing really changed other than more people took it more serious because I continued to do it, right? Like, if you're calling one list and not getting a lead and being like, I don't get leads, I don't get deals, like, you don't get the game, right? Like, you just came in, you're going to leave that easy, then beat it, right? Like, you're going to leave, right? But networking and being involved in things like this and coming to events like this, if you're in this every single day, well, you're going to be like, let's say you came to JJ's call every single week, right? You would be a prominent figure in these calls. It's not your group, it's JJ's group. But everyone knows in JJ's group, you're going to see Cynthia, you're going to see Pino, you're going to see Jonathan. Now you're a prominent figure in that group, right? Well, if you're in other networking groups as well, you're a prominent figure in that group. You're a prominent figure in all these other groups, and all the people who run these groups know you because you're in all these groups. Well, now you're kind of like inching up right next to them, aren't you? And guess what comes with being right next to them all the time? The same type of deals they do, the same type of relationships they have, or now relationships do you see how that works? But like, you can't just do this for a year. And I'm gonna use regular relationships, like romantic relationships. Like, you think you're gonna like invest in a romantic relationship for 1 year and that's gonna like last forever? It's no different. You have to invest in that every year, every week, every day, a little bit, a small amount every day. Do something for that relationship. And that's how a good relationship will grow. It's no different than in business. Relationships are relationships, right? So, you want to talk about, I could go on that for so long, but you are your brand, who you are as a person. And I think one thing I'll just add to that, just to kind of leave you on this note, I heard this from a guy named, there's a podcaster named Pat Flynn, and he says, embrace your weird. Embrace your weird, right? We're all weird. right? We're all a little off, right? If you're not weird, if you're thinking, well, I'm not that weird, you're the weirdest of all. That's you. You're the weird one. Embrace who you are. Embrace that part of you that's different than everything else. Really embrace it. And maybe that becomes your thing, right? Maybe, that's the thing. JJ was the weird guy taking pictures with everyone. And guess what? Now everyone wants to get in the group. Everyone wants the chance to get on the call and talk to the group. He just was being himself, his authentic self. And what some people might have been like, oh, that's weird. Who's this guy who wants to take my picture? Now it's like, oh, I wonder if he'll take my picture and post it for me. Like, right? Like, I think he's such a good example of that, right? So for you and networking, it's just, as a real estate investor, like, are you in this game or not? And if you're in it, like, get in it. Like, you're in it and you stay in it. And I don't care how many years it takes. It took me 4 years to do more than one event in a year. 4 years to do more than one in a year. But I never lost the conviction about it. Right. So you can go down this call for a couple of weeks. And if you're like, oh, after a couple of weeks, no one really knows me and I've been on every week and maybe JJ's never called on me. I've been on every week. Oh, okay. Well, so get on next week and get on every week because it's not something you do. Do it because it's who you are as a person. Right. Don't talk to your kids because it's something you're going to do right now. Be someone that wants to naturally talk to them because you want to learn about them, not to get somewhere because you have an agenda. Because you're 15. Like, I know you're my child and all. I know you because I do. But I'm sure there's so many things I don't know about you. I mean, I'm not with you in school. I don't know who you're talking to, what you're watching. Like, tell me about you today. Tell me something I don't know about you. No judgment. Love you either way. Tell me something I never even thought that you like now, or what's something new you've heard, or something, right? A word you don't know what it means and you want to know. I swear, no matter what it is, you got a safe space for about 20 seconds to get off any word you want, and I will tell you no judgment. You'll be like, oh crap, I can't believe you know that word. So that's just a little bit on networking and being in groups, and I'm a big believer of it. And I'm so grateful to be able to be here, JJ, and to have known you for so long, to have watched. I've been in the Fortune Builders community more than 10 years, 12 years now, and I loved watching you come up, in that community. Not that you weren't already an established person, but in that community and who you've grown into. I think is a testament to you doing exactly what we just talked about. And all of you can come and get on all these calls all you want. But I think that's one of the biggest lessons you'll ever learn is just watching JJ do what he does and how he got here and his journey. I think it's pretty special, and I'm just glad to be a small part of it.
Oh man, thank you. We talked the other day about age, and age is irrelevant. What I mean by that is, obviously, I got a couple of years on you, as my gray beard says, but I hold you in the highest regard and esteem, and have every bit of respect and admiration for what you do. And it's not, doesn't matter of being older or younger. We have our talents, and you definitely have yours, and I respect you. And you get those accolades and recognition from someone such as yourself is huge. And I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Because for me, I've just, not to make it about me, but just for a second, I've just tried to stay consistent and be me. And I think the thing I take away from you is be yourself. I just try and be me. And I thank everybody that's here, from yourself to all the people that are on the calls regularly, or even those for the first time, those watching the YouTube channel. It's about engagement and about building our relationships. And I just want to say, on behalf of myself, JP, and all the people that are here on the call today, and I know that are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for everything you do, everything you've done. And you have a huge future in front of you to continue to make an impact on the future of our world by helping our future, which are the children of our society. So there could be no bigger impact that anyone can make than what you're doing. And I thank you for everybody, parents and people like me that don't have kids, just helping kids, kids need direction, and so often that it's not there. It's not at home. It's not at school. And I know that sometimes just one person like yourself can make such a huge impact. And
yeah, we're all one caring adult away from being very impacted, very positively impacted. It only takes one caring adult.
Exactly. So, guys, if you're watching this video on YouTube right now, please like the video. Please, in the comments, please put your comments on the video and what you think, and how wonderful JP is, because we love him. I love him. But please look for more of our great speakers coming up on Flip Side Up with JJ. Look for my Zoom channel. It's a Facebook group, JJ's Mastermind Networking. My website is networkingwithjj.com. It's just about relationships. Don't chase the deal, chase the relationship. People do business with people they like. They can't like you unless they know you. They can't know if you're not visible. If you're invisible, opportunity walks right past you. So be visible, be memorable, because if you're not memorable, you're forgettable. Anyhow, as Stan Merrill would say, get out there, crush it, be the best you can be every single day, guys. On behalf of myself and JP, thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys soon.